Hi again, my name is Chris Hadley and I'm with Snobby Robot, and I'm speaking today with Rob Gokee, who is the composer of Cesa Ward's great web series Producing Juliet. He has worked with Cesa Ward many times before, including on Good People in Love, Anyone But Me, and a series that she also co-created with Susan Miller, who also worked with her as a co-creator of Anyone But Me, called Bestsellers. And of course, many of you will know his music not only for those series, but also for others like Pairings, Cost of Capital, Night of the Zombie King, just to name a few, and also his work on the upcoming film Love in the Time of Monsters. Rob, welcome to Crew Conversations.
Hi, Chris. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you again, too. Now, tell me about yourself, your background as a composer, your influences as a composer, and your experience working on not only the movies that I mentioned, including the upcoming Alice and the Monster that you did with David Nett and Shannon Nelson, but also the web series I talked about. And the second part of that question would be, how did you become involved with Producing Juliet, besides the fact that you, obviously, this is not the first time you've worked with Tina, and of course because your wife Allison happens to be a producer on it.
I've been composing on my own for about 8 years, and so I've done lots of web series and shorts and features and television and commercials. I met Tina through the web series world. We ran in the same circles. We knew all the same people. Went to the same events back in 2009 or so. She approached me for Anyone But Me back in the second or third season and needed a musical cue. Anyone But Me, for the most part, has almost no music, so it was exciting to get a chance to work with Tina and Susan on something. And so we worked on one cue together, and then Bestsellers came very quickly after that, and she approached me for the theme song. And I've worked with Tina on 5 projects. I've worked with her more than any other one director. We went from Bestsellers to Good People in Love to The Guards of Dagmar teaser. So we have a shorthand in terms of our composer-director relationship, in that I know what she is going to want before I even write one note. Relatively speaking, she's very minimalist. Tina doesn't like a lot of score, and she doesn't like it to be huge, and so I already know that going in with every project.
One thing I've noticed, not only from talking to Rochelle and to Allison, is that what you just mentioned, Tina knows exactly what she wants, not only from you in terms of a composer, but also from her actors, and especially that shows in each of her projects. And it also shows in her writing. The writing on the show and the performances by the cast is exceptional. It's exemplary.
Yeah, Tina's writing, in my opinion, is always exemplary, but the cast does such an amazing job, and I feel like every episode they gel a little bit more than the episode before, so it gets more and more exciting as we go. If you look at episodes 1 through 4 and the note-taking process for the score, the notes got shorter and shorter as we got up through the 4th episode, which is the way it's supposed to work. So by the time we got to 4, there were almost no notes, because I knew what the score needed to be and where it needed to go, and I kind of let the characters and the writing dictate that. And so you kind of fall into this comfortable area where you are part of the story, even musically.
Yeah, and since you mentioned that Tina really isn't the kind of producer who would prefer wall-to-wall score, I mean, how did that factor into, if you have it in the pre-production process, like in the spotting process? Like, did you even think of individual themes for the characters, or was that something that she really pretty much ruled out?
Well, we definitely thought of individual themes, because like television, web series, you want a theme for certain characters. You want something that you can start a thread of and take to completion at some future point in a different episode. So themes are really important. With Juliet, I knew it's a very intimate story, even though we have a large cast. and I knew we needed an intimate score, and Tina really loves the piano, and so I knew that that was going to be the basis of the score and what we did. So we kind of based things around that instrument, which is a very solitary instrument. I feel like a lot of these characters are alone in a lot of ways with what they're going through, and so it worked really well. In terms of themes, they just, they just kind of happen, and we have one for Juliet, and we have one for Rebecca, and everybody's themes. I'm trying to find a way to put this verbally. When I'm writing, it just kind of happens, and you figure out like what speaks musically for that character as you go along, and then it almost just kind of develops, and suddenly I realize, oh, I have a theme for that person.
Yeah, it's like, I guess the word you would probably use to describe that is something more of like an organic, natural approach as you watch the film as it goes. I mean, like you see the characters develop, and instantly you sort of kind of find a way to express their emotions, express what they're going through musically.
Exactly.
Now, what drew you to the show and its overall story? I mean, what did you like about Producing Juliet? I mean, in terms of your own personal experience as someone who works in the creative industry, and especially because it's also a show about people who are trying to make a living in entertainment as theater performers, as actors, and people trying to put on a show.
Well, I mean, I read the script long before it was shot, and I fell in love with it at the script stage. And so by the time it was shot, and Tina's stuff, when you read the script and you envision what it would look like on the screen, it almost always looks exactly like I had in my head, and that the actors just, everybody did this great job interpreting what she had written and finding their own individual voices. So a lot of my inspiration comes from the writing and from the acting. I mean, which in turn is a result of Tina's direction when she's on set too. That's what, when I'm writing for Juliet, I'm watching the episodes or the scene over and over and over again, and pulling my musical inspiration from that. And so that's where the score comes from.
What was it like working alongside Tina for Producing Juliet? And not only for that project, but also for the ones you worked on in the past. What have you learned in the time you've spent working with her?
She screams at me all the time, and so that's what motivates me to work. Tina's great. Tina's she's very driven, and she knows what she wants before you even have the conversation. So there's never a conversation where I say, what do you want for the score? And she doesn't have an answer. She's already figured it out in her head, at least generally. And it's helpful because it speeds up the process and it makes it easier. We don't have to play a guessing game of what instruments do we need and what style of score. And again, working with her on 5 separate projects, by the time you get to the 5th project, it's like working with a friend because you know that person so well. There's no awkward first date because you're already in that relationship.
Yeah.
And that's always the best situation for a composer. You really, I don't personally want to go from director to director to director. I want to meet directors that keep making new projects that I can work with again, because I feel like the score gets better as the relationship gets better.
Most people, in terms of music for film and TV, don't really consider, or at least know about, the relationship between the director and the composer. For those who really haven't had a chance to explore that, what is a typical relationship like between a director and a composer? And in the case of Producing Juliet, in what ways was working on this project similar and or different than other shows you've worked on in the past, including your collaborations with Tina and Susan?
The director-composer relationship is people will talk about how you get hired more based on who you know versus what you know, and that's entirely true. The thing about that is that director wants to hire somebody, obviously not only that's talented and can give them what they want, but that is easy to work with and is fun to be around, and whose personality you get along with, because you spend a lot of time going back and forth with that person, and often it's hours in a room every week going over the score, and so you want somebody that you like, because if it's somebody you don't like personally, it doesn't matter how talented they are, it's going to be a miserable process. And so it is like dating in that, or like making friends, in that you have to find somebody that you're compatible with in order to make it work right. And so, the best relationships are always the ones where you become so close with that director that you're friends after you're done, or that you want to work together again. Which happened with Tina. In the first, with Anyone But Me, and it was, my notes were both from Tina and Susan. It was very different because I hadn't met either one of them before, and although they kind of knew what they wanted, it was a little bit of a crapshoot of, okay, I'm going to write this thing and send it, and I hope they don't hate it. And then Bestsellers was a little bit easier and a totally different kind of score. And then by the time we got to Good People in Love, Tina and I had kind of fallen into a groove where, when she came to me, I wasn't nervous about, impressing her or figuring out what I had to write. I knew that we could get through the process. And the Good People in Love score was very different than the first two things I'd written for. Bestsellers was very upbeat and almost song-like. Anyone But Me was like an acoustic guitar piece. And so for Good People in Love, we had this piece that was more like classical music with strings. And then for Dagmar, we went into kind of a mysterious, dark, sci-fi-ish vibe. And so every project has been a slightly different score, but every time we work with her, it gets easier. At this point, we've become friends. I helped out. I actually cooked on the Juliet set for this last episode 3 and 4 shoot, and we stayed with Tina. When Tina comes out here, she'll stay with us. It's become a friendship through that relationship, composer-director relationship as a score.
What are some of the biggest hopes you have for the show's success? And do you possibly see a life for the show's music beyond the boundaries of the show itself, like as a soundtrack, CD, or a download?
What was the first part of that question? I'm sorry.
What are some of the biggest hopes you have for the success of Producing Juliet? And this is a two-part question. The second part of it is, do you possibly see a life for the show's music beyond the boundaries of the show itself? I mean, we obviously talked about the play, if it ever gets off the ground, but also what about soundtracks, CDs, digital downloads?
Well, I would love Juliet to actually become a television show, or to become a web series that it's huge in popularity and has a lot of support behind it. I love TV, and so TV is always my ultimate dream and medium. And so it'd be great if it did. In terms of the score, I think it would be cool if the score was part of the stage play. I definitely think a soundtrack would be great once we finish the season out. I've already been cutting the cues into soundtrack cues and giving it to Tina and a few of the other producers, so they've got it. And so I'm definitely prepared for that once we're able to finish out the season.
Definitely, and as always, you do a great job with every web series and TV show and movie you do. Great music, and I just want to say thank you again for coming on and talking about that music and about your involvement with Producing Juliet.
Thank you so much for having me.
And please keep all of us posted on your new projects, especially Brian Majestic Dinosaur Hunter and everything else you're doing in the web series world. I'm sure everybody will definitely love to see that.
Thanks, Chris.
This has been Crew Conversations. I'm Chris Hadley for SnobbyRobot.com. My guest has been Rob Gokee. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day.